Welcome to the Acoustic Guitar Podcast. I'm Joey Lusterman. Does playing acoustic guitar provide benefits beyond the joy and satisfaction of making music? In seeking to answer that question, we learn about a range of music therapy experiences and explore the physical, emotional, spiritual, and clinical benefits of playing and listening to music. Hosts Nick Grizzle and Bradman are joined by guests Michelle Qureshi and Ian Wilkerson. Michelle Qureshi is a classically trained guitarist, multi-instrumentalist, composer, practicing yogi, student of shamanism, and presenter of sound experiences. And Ian Wilkerson is a board-certified music therapist with dual degrees from Berklee College of Music, a breathwork coach, guitarist and singer-songwriter, and the founder of Bay Area Music Therapy. Before we dive into this fascinating discussion, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode, Strings by Mail.
Stuck in a rut? Just not feeling it? Get inspired by new strings. New strings sound better, are easier to play, and are more in tune. So change them or upgrade them. At Strings by Mail, we have the strings you need to hit all the right notes. Choose from over 6,000 strings from 75 manufacturers. Use our string filter or call one of our expert players to help find your perfect set. Your music, your strings delivered fast. Strings by Mail.
You can learn more at stringsbymail.com.
First thing I wanted to ask, Ian, I'm going to start with you on this one. What initially drew you to the guitar? And can you briefly tell us a little bit about what pulled you toward the area of music that you're now working in?
I'd say what pulled me to the guitar was my mom and dad playing all of the great music from the 60s and 70s when I was a young kiddo, just growing up with a couple of rock and roller hippies who, so the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Dylan, all of the great music that I grew up listening to from my mom and my dad. That's pretty much how I first got the guitar. And then what really did it was the deal was my uncle. He gave me my first electric guitar. So that was my first instrument. And it was a BC Rich Rave. It was really, really heavy. So I appreciated my first acoustic after that.
For sure. And what pulled you toward the area of music you now work in?
I come from a family of healers and integrative practitioners and even MDs. Some of the people in my family are MDs. Like literally I have 10 chiropractors in my immediate family. My dad's a chiropractor. My mom was a sexologist and a tantrika and a Reiki and breathwork practitioner. My older sister had in her younger life worked with special needs and in high schools. And then what really drew me to it was when I realized the power of music to bring people together in community and help them grow and find their own wellness. And so I did that in junior high and high school. I would take my guitar to the special education classrooms. And I would go join the special day class bungalow and on sixth period or lunch, and I would jam with the kiddos. And I think that's really was the beginning of the seed that was planted. I had no idea at that point that I would pursue a degree and career in music therapy. But that was the beginning of it.
Michelle, what drew you to the guitar initially and what pulled you toward the area of music you now work in?
Sure. Well, when I was very young, I just seemed to have this affinity for that instrument. Something about those strings just pulled me in. But of course, it was just toy guitars. We go to the, shop and get a treat. And I just get these toy guitars that would inevitably be broken or maybe, destroyed in some way. And then visuals, the cartoon with the Beatles came out, like similar to you. There were the, the 60s and 70s and very guitar focused kind of pop music and just really cool stuff going on. But I was still just, little and attracted to it. And not until I was 13 years old, I bought my first guitar and started just immersive self-teaching myself how to play all kinds of fretted instruments, and just started collecting them. And when it was time for college, I was a little bit like not encouraged, because I had a really different family background than Ian, and nobody was really into music. Nobody really knew that path or the healing arts in any sense. So that's been kind of a more solo journey for me. When I started out in college, it was for psychology. I got 3 semesters in, and I was like, I was dying inside because I didn't have that creative outlet. And I changed course, and I started from scratch as a classical guitarist, and that was my training, to learn that. And that, most of the other students, they started playing at 3 years old, and it was a very, very interesting thing. But I'm absolutely glad I did it, and that foundation, I believe, laid the groundwork for what I've come to with music now, this many years later. For the last dozen years, I've been playing and making my own music and presenting sound immersions with all the different instruments, the healing instruments. So that healing aspect, I came by through the process of kind of doing it myself, doing attending yoga, playing guitar for yoga, then attending the classes and doing more and more spiritual expansion, which expanded my music, and being able, because I had that foundation, to do this all in what feels like a very intuitive approach now. And that's, that passion is there, and it kind of just passes through the intellect so briefly. I don't think about it now. I just play, and I love to do that.
I would love to ask, how do you define, we're thinking about terms, there's sound healing, music therapy. I'd love to hear your opinions on the difference between those two things, or is there a difference?
Yeah, there's two different, there is and there isn't. So, there's different pedagogies, there's different higher, opportunities for education and different curriculums and schools and programs. You can get a degree in sound healing and you can get a degree in music therapy, and they are separate pedagogies. And I tend to explain it to my clientele, and to others, that in the sound healing world, my understanding, and I do integrate some sound healing into my work, but it's more of a passive experience where the recipient receives the sound and the acoustics and the vibrations, and it's a relaxation experience or anxiety reduction or guided imagery through music. And it's a more passive experience. And as a music therapist, the difference for me in my training and my practice is that mine is interactive. And my goal 80% of the time, my goal in my clinical work is to engage my clientele in developing an active relationship and participation in music making. And it's through the relationship of making music with a skilled clinician or therapist that the therapeutic relationship is scored, and that opportunities for change and growth and whatever it is that we're working on, wellness, anxiety reduction, habilitative goals, impulse control, learning, cognitive, TBI, rehabilitation, learning how to talk again, whatever it is that we're working on, it's through the act of being engaged in music making. And then I'd say there's also training in music therapy when you go to get a degree. You also have subspecialties within being board certified as a music therapist. There's subspecialties that are like the Bonnie Guide to, guided music relaxation, guided imagery through music. So there are passive experiences, and I do include sound opportunities like that. But that's the big difference. When I get together with kiddos, we play, we run around, we jump, we move, we dance, we sing, we scream, we breathe deep, and in some instances, and so I think that's a notable difference in terms of the education I got and also my clinical practice.
So that's really interesting to hear, and really, a different trained approach. I'm trained as a musician, so that's not really there's not really a methodology I use to it beyond that, approaching it passionately. And I typically, let's say in these sound immersions, I call my thing a harmonic sound immersion, and I wouldn't say that it's passive, because it's an experience that's being shared, and oftentimes I'll do them in yoga studios or whatnot, and a couple dozen people maybe are in shavasana or any comfortable position for about an hour. My improvisation on everything from my guitars to flutes, and I'm looking around my room, the gongs, the chimes, the didgeridoo, just all these really healing instruments that I kind of just use to create an experience. They don't touch an instrument in this instance. They are just in some kind of meditative space that benefits them, that heals them in whatever way they are needed. I akin it more to a Reiki experience, really, because I feel like the vibrations and the musical energy, just through pure music and connection with the people who are present that kind of guide me what I'm playing, that experience takes them wherever they need it to go. The more of a meditator they already are, or plugged into certain disciplines, the experiences seem to be more astounding. On the other hand, I've done it for a group of students on the spectrum, and one of the most vivid experiences happened to one of the aides who were there with the kids. She literally, tears in her eyes, experiencing the connection with a son she had just lost. And some of these stories are just so amazing through the power of music. I don't start them out saying, here's the love tone, the 528 hertz, or this is going to help your hips or something like that. I'm just kind of almost in a way naively playing and creating a sound experience that, again, I don't think it's passive, but it's not, in the sense as you're explaining where, you get up and move around and do that. So I continue to do that. I've been doing that for about 5 years. And so in that way, that's the experience I know through these instruments. The experience as healing through just the guitar, that's kind of a different and generally very intimate thing as well.
Beautiful. In terms of the passive statement I made, and no intention to diminish the value of sound healing at all. I was just trying to create a motoric, clinical difference in terms of the engagement and the level of interactivity, because they're not laying in a state and receiving the sound, right? But in terms of quantum mechanics and my understanding of energy and vibrational frequency and all of those aspects, absolutely, no matter what we do in our existence, there's tons of interaction on a more microscopic level. So, when I do sound healing in my work as well, I totally honor and understand and love that there's a lot of interaction going on that I'm not seeing with my eyes. Just wanted to add that.
Beautiful. I love, there's so much beautiful crossover between what you do.
There really is. Yeah.
And interesting because the training is quite different, really. I mean, yeah, we're both in that funnel of music, but the methodologies you employ and the way I intuit music and what it does, it is right. Pretty interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Elton, like you were saying, there's very different ways of using the idea of healing, but it's all coming back to music is so powerful, and I wanted to get your take on, and Michelle, we could start with you on this one. Some of the things that music, and maybe specifically guitar, if you want to get into that, can do for one's overall health. Maybe not somebody doesn't say, I specifically need X, Y, or Z. Just in general, what are maybe some of the things that you've seen or that you know of that music has the power to kind of affect one's overall health, and if there's anything specific with guitar that might be in that realm too? Sure.
Yes. Well, first of all, for me, guitar playing is a meditation. And when I present it, for instance, I'm really done with kind of playing the background gigs or the wine cellars or whatever. So what I found, as far as other than just a concert or a sound immersion, I tend to play, for different worship services, because you have the silence and the focus. And when I'm playing for that, I can see the impact. It's almost like offering a prayer, I mean, I see it in a secular way for me, but I am in different houses of worship, so it was taken in as ever. But so from what I offer, I see it in that way. I'm sharing a meditation or a prayer, or always within that is a story, just kind of wrapped around the emotions of the piece. For me personally, the experience, and I hope I understand the question, how it impacts me. It's something, if I'm away from it too long, I can feel that, my focus is slipping, and my soul connection even a little bit slipping. So I have to have that time that is just purely improvisational on the instrument. It's not like, oh, I need to practice this, or, I need to finish writing that. I need that just space to create. And it just changes my mood. It grounds me, and it raises me up too. So it's that, heaven and earth kind of pull. And so it's been a really important part of my life. There's been times where, I've been away for quite a while of the instrument, but like I said, the last dozen years, I've been pretty solidly there, making music, creating, and sharing it. And it's not just it's a physical thing, it's a mental thing, it's almost a whole mind-body complex for me, because there's a way it feels, right? It's very tactile. There's a way that sound comes into you and comes through you. And then there's the emotion behind it. So that all just, it just kind of keeps adding up to such an experience. And when you can share it with others, that's fantastic. But I also just need some of that for me. So, yeah. I haven't taught for ages. So I can't really, I have to draw on some memory to see the impact of, the accomplishments it offers someone trying to learn the instruments, the satisfaction, the love of creating something, just with your own hands and heart. So I would say those benefits are the big one the big ones that I've observed in the past in teaching, and just, everybody that plays for, or let's say plays from the heart, not from the ego. People hear that, people connect with that. The ego stuff gets very messy in connecting, but, heart to heart, you touch each other's soul. Yeah.
Ian, how about you?
Well, just in my interest to try to bring it back into the acoustic, in my clinical work, I'll speak about the people I serve and my mission in life, and to help people grow through music and relate to themselves and others. And the thing that is one of the biggest hurdles for me in my clinical practice is how I integrate this technological phenomena in terms of screen time and all of the beat ready, quick, instant gratification, short attention spans. Like, everybody thinks they're a beat producer. Everybody's going to use electronics to create music, and it's at everybody's fingertip. And so it also, in some ways, it also brings them farther away from their somatic self, from their energy, from their frequency. And on the other hand, it kind of philosophically, it brings them closer to the quantum mechanic world, because, technology can converge with the energy too. But anyway, not to get too heady on that, but like, the thing I'm saying is that I really appreciate acoustic guitars and the acoustic instruments, because when I'm working with people in music, I want to get them engaged in learning and making music and experiencing music and being the crafts and like my goal is to anybody, there's no prerequisite or music knowledge. And when you come and work with me in music therapy, I'm your coach, and it's my job to help the other person find access to expressing through music, to using the language of music. And they don't have to have any background or training. And it's my responsibility to help create a container that is safe and that they can find trust in music so that they can use that medium to express and to relate to me and to themselves. And so the beautiful thing is when they come in and they're like, oh, they want like easy access. I always have to like grapple with like, okay, how am I going to bring them back to the acoustic? Like, I want to just use the drum and my acoustic guitar. And I don't want it to be about producing a beat or, when I'm in teen treatment and I'm working with suicidal ideation and OCD and like mental, moderate to mild mental health challenges with teens. Like, I want to bring it to the acoustic, but everybody wants to use the recordings of their favorite music and stuff. So I really love the acoustic guitar's ability once I find my in and I can create that buy-in from the people I'm working with. And I'll use technology and I'll use the screen or I'll use Spotify playlists and like explore their favorite music. But then I bring it back to the acoustic. I'm okay, well, let's do it, you and me. Like, let's turn the recording off. Let's pull up the Ultimate Guitar tabs and let's look at how the song goes. Let's look at the lyrics and analyze them. And let's play it on our acoustics. Oh, you don't know how to play acoustic? Well, here's a bass. Let me show you how to play dum, 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 dum. And then like maybe it's accessible and I can try to make it accessible to them. Or I can do an open chord tuning on the acoustic and they don't have to know anything about fretting, but I can be like, oh, okay, well, the key of the song is in C and I know I can craft an experience for the person where they don't have to have the fine motor skill, but I can give them an instrument that's intentionally premeditated and set up like an acoustic guitar tuned to open D chord. And I can play Here Comes the Sun in the key of D by the Beatles, and they can strum that open D chord through the whole song, and it just sounds cool even when I'm not playing a D because it's a polychord, and it's still within the tonal center, and they feel the success and the reward, and that's the importance of the acoustic instrument for me. And being able to adapt and be malleable with the instrument and change the tuning real quick. And give the client something to hold and to feel the vibration versus if I have an electric guitar, they might get a different tactile somatic experience from the electric. It's still going to be vibrational from the speaker, but it's really powerful for me to be able to give a kiddo on the spectrum with sensory integration issues, who struggles with his sensorial system, to like give them a guitar and have them hold it and have them play an open low D. I drop it down, turn it down so that the vibration is more robust. And help them feel that tactily. So that's some ways in which the acoustic really supports my work and empowers me and my clients to have greater access to the experience.
Yeah, that makes me think of what it must be like to be in that room. Have you experienced people telling you like, wow, this helped with this particular thing that I'm working on, or I felt this way that I haven't felt in a while or haven't ever felt because of an acoustic instrument experience?
Oh, absolutely. And I can give you one that's even more magical than like a verbal self-report. Like, verbal self-report's great, but like when I work with minimally responsive individuals who might be in a vegetative state, or when I work with, I also work with hearing impaired individuals. So, being able to, and this can also be really prevalent with like a really good subwoofer, but bringing it to the acoustic when I have like a hearing impaired client, and it's also relative to like ASD and on sensory systems because they get that vibrational impact. But yes, there's been a client, I can think of one who, was very disengaged, and I'm, pulling out all the tools out of my tool bag to try to like elicit some interaction or some robust facial affect or something that shows me they're connecting to me in some capacity, beyond just the energy of being in the same room. And the moment that I came close enough to where they could feel the acoustic, like the vibrational feeling of the acoustic. And then moreover, as soon as I gently invited and elicited and asked if with a little gesture, hand over hand support, can you bring their hand over to the acoustic, and you could put their hand on the acoustic, and then I would play some chords. And the moment that they felt the guitar, and it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh, now they were brought into the experience more than they were before. And it was really impactful because prior to me finding that door, that portal to get them to connect with me and the experience, they were a little bit more aloof and kind of like ambivalent and like maybe meandering in the room and exploring their sensory environment. And then, once I was able to bring us closer in proximity and them onto the guitar, it just ignited a deeper rapport, and the connection started to really formulate.
Michelle, I'm curious, I saw a picture of you with a beautiful harp guitar and just hanging out on Spotify. Yes. And I'm so curious, your feelings about acoustic instruments in these settings. Would you make the same music, the beautiful music that you do, on an electric?
It's not the same on an electric. I mean, you go through my catalog and you'll find pieces. I love working with it too, but it's the vibration, you're holding. I think about when I'm holding the guitar and playing, it's right against my heart chakra, and you just, whether it's a little ukulele or the guitar lele, I even have some Turkish and other instruments that are part of that connection. Now, not to say that this basket of flutes I have over here aren't beautiful for the throat chakra. They all have their place, but the vibrating strings are, as soon as someone in history, pulled some, held one length and the other and gave it a pluck. I mean, there's something about the, chordophones in general that are, to me, really heart-centered, heart-based. Now, I may have gone on one of those tangents we were talking about, but
No, I think we're right in the zone. Because we're talking about guitars, right? Like the specifically plucked instruments.
Right. So that harp guitar, what can be beautiful about that is because of bass, the strings are on the bass, they're unfretted. So there's 6 that just go descending from D, C, B, all the way down to F, which I usually drop down to E. It's a little more practical. But even when you're just playing on those 6 strings, because you hit that just occasionally, you don't want constant bass strings, it's too much. It's still all just in this vibrational thing, and it feels really good. It feels good against your body. I also have over on this other one a guitar it's not a baritone. It's literally an octave lower. It's like a nylon string body, and every string is pitched an octave lower. And I really respond to bass, and that part of it really feels good too, So I'm with you on the acoustics of saying, the beauty of those vibrations, the different frequencies have their colors. I get a little bit, different keys can bring colors to me, and I really, it's all like on the spectrum of what we can see and hear, but they all go beyond that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You bring up like the bass and how that really, no pun intended, resonates with you. Are there different? I know there's certain frequencies that connect with the human body in different ways, but is there in general something about lower pitched or higher pitched frequencies that kind of maybe activate certain things in the body or certain things in the brain that you've seen or that you know about through research?
Well, research-wise, I can't speak really clearly on that, but I can touch upon the idea about the A440 kind of thing being more of a mental stressor, and that if you do drop things down to A equals 432 hertz instead, I don't know how much of that is the real or placebo, but it does feel better. It just feels a little bit more, and there's different research and experiments on that kind of thing. But I think we're, except for some of my tuning bowls and other things, singing bowls that I have that are tuned to 432, and a couple current projects, it's really hard to get that, in the mainstream acceptable. I think there's more and more music being played and written in that, but I know as recently as being in Nashville at one of the NAMM shows and listening to an audio engineering panel and bringing this up afterward to the guy. It was an all-male session. So I go up and I try to raise the question, what about 432? And then he really rudely just said, well, where's my tinfoil hat? So I knew that discussion was done. Number one, you're a woman, and number two, oh, you must be crazy. So
I mean, that's not a new idea.
That is not new at all. It was just, I think, maybe someone can correct me, but I think it was just in the 20th century that the 440 was established as the, what do you call that? The standard. Yeah. But before, around the world, that concept is also a little bit crazy. You go to Indonesia and every gamelan orchestra is just tuned to that village's sense of what works. And I love those sounds. That is, and then we leave even just the Western scales when you start talking about different tunings. So
Ian, do you see a different response for different types of frequencies with people that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. I think the most prevalent aspect of this in my work for me and the people I work with is that it's all individualized. I have a hard time fully grabbing onto that there's these rigid parameters for any one person's physiology or biometrics, only because I've experienced such a spectrum with regards to how different frequencies and sounds impact different people I work with. And so I never try, I don't typically take it for granted. I typically assess, what response am I observing, or what response am I sensing with my intuition if I'm doing more energetic work, which I do sometimes. So if I'm a breath work coach as well, so I do a ton of breath work with people where it's just all about the somatic and there's no expectation for engagement except their breath. And so when I'm working with somebody in their breath and I'm using tones or I'm using frequencies, or if I'm working with kiddos who have autism, or if I'm working with impulse control, or if I'm working in TBI for neurological development, I just experiment and I assess where the person is and what kind of response am I observing. What self-report are they giving me? Are they giving me feedback? Are they verbally saying that felt good? Are they telling me that it made them feel more anxious? Are they showing me that it made them feel more anxious? And then I recalibrate and I try to adjust what it is I'm doing. So if I start out with 440, or if I start out with 432, if I do an E flat exercise, I'm aware of those pitch prevalences, but I always adjust and adapt based on the feedback I'm getting. The frequencies are so prevalent though, and absolutely powerful. And I have a little thing of tuning forks, and I never went to the Sound Healing Institute, but I've done some conferences, and I've the Globe Sound Healing Institute in the Bay. I've attended those seminars, and I love the work, but that's how I approach the element of psychoacoustics and kind of the vibrational frequency awareness, is I assess and adapt. And then because you asked the question, again, I'm not a research buff, but there is a paper I've referenced before, and anybody can go online and search under the NIH website, and there's a great survey. I just pulled it up right now so I could tell your listeners. There's a paper, it's a narrative review of research literature that maps the landscape of the mechanisms of the effect of sound vibration on humans, including the physiological, neurological, and biochemical. And it's the name of the paper. It's a synthesis of all the research, right? It was put out in 2021, and it's called The Possible Mechanisms for the Effects of Sound Vibration on Human Health. So if your listeners are like, yo, I want to know more about how the neurology is being mapped and how is the body being measured, because we live in a very quantitative world now where everybody wants everything to be discreetly measured, which is not my forte. I'm totally process oriented, and I'm all about being adaptable, and I'm integrative, but we do want results and outcomes, and insurance companies want to be able to justify payment. So these are prevalent measures to be aware of. Yep. So that paper.
I'm gonna scope that out both for the podcast and personally later. I love diving into that research stuff. And we'll throw that link in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to read it. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Can I add something personal? Because I haven't spoken much about myself in terms of my own passion in my artist life. So I've been a recording artist my whole life since I was 16. And, you know, a lot of that has been electric. But just so for the sake of your listeners in this acoustic world, me and another dad, it's been 10 years since I've put out a commercial release. And all of my prior releases, for the most part, have been electric, rock band, funk, jam, rock, singer-songwriter. There's been a few acoustic numbers sprinkled in there, but it's been a lot of like jam band, rock, pop stuff, right? And I'm super stoked to say that like within the next month and a half, I'm going to be dropping my first EP in 10 years. And it's an acoustic duet recorded live, old school, no overdubs. We went in the studio and in 4 hours, two dads sat face to face with pop screens and mics and acoustics mic'd, 4 microphones, and even a little telephone mic over on the side that was like an old school telephone. And we just recorded 3 songs without any redos. And we both sing harmonies and we both play guitar, and it's like alternative rock, like inspired by like, you know, Soundgarden and like, you know, Alice in Chains, kind of like the MTV Unplugged era.
The golden era.
Dude, like just, oh my gosh, like that stuff hits my heart. But anyway, that is exciting. The name of the band is called Flow, Flow.
Do you use techniques from your practice when recording your own music?
I do. I'm very aware of my breath always. I'm always aware of trying to balance my parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. However, I spend a lot of time in my sympathetic nervous system. I'm always on. I'm on. Like I'm just always energized, right? So it's a life challenge for me, a lifelong lesson to learn how to make space and slow down. And I slow down in my art when I'm making music, and I slow down when I'm playing my acoustic and channeling creativity. And the thing that's the most beautiful thing about my experience in music making is when I write music, I songwrite often, but I don't ever feel like I can lay ownership to it. Like I might copyright it because I've got a mechanism through which I can, and perhaps have some benefit to that. But like I really just channel. Like when I songwrite and I write my acoustic, I'm very aware of my breath. Before I go into the studio, I definitely breathe. I'll do some like nervous system reset, recalibration things like breath of fire, or, you know, this is like a Kundalini or pranayama yoga practice where I'm like doing really rapid nose breathing, or I'll do shoulder shrugs, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, it can be like a 1 minute thing or a 2 minute thing where I just really burn myself out, but it's like, and I'm hyper oxygenating my body. But it's then afterwards I have that surrender of like, yeah, like after a good workout or after really good sex or, you know, like, I mean, let's tell it like it is, right? Like our bodies have biomechanical responses to experiences, right? So, you know, but just really breathing deep and then I definitely did that before recording this album. And then like when we screwed up and we're like, oh man, we got to do another take, I definitely would like get up, walk around, breathe deep, just hold my guitar in my body for a moment and like not play it and just kind of connect with it. Yeah, I don't know if I went on too big of a tangent, but I said the S word on air. Sorry.
Michelle, how about you?
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned many of those things. Alternate nostril breathing is another really good centering one. You know, the breath of fire, relaxation. And one thing I have to do, well, my studio's right in this other room, and that's where I record. So it can be any time of day or night, as long as, you know, all the mowers and leaf blowers and all that BS is not out there on the street. But so I do the recording in there. One thing I've really been just the last few months paying attention to is when you're recording, because of course, in this situation, I'm the engineer and I'm the, producer and the performer, the composer, and my body can feel so tight, when I'm playing, because it's not like, I'm going over my budget. It's like I'm going over my ability to just focus and get this right, because when I record, I like to play straight through a piece. I don't have the kind of studio to do the magic editing and slicing and all this stuff. But I've lately been going through my body, especially from from your hips and your legs, just making sure those muscles are just, loosened up, because that's where, my feet are on the ground, on the floor, and they're just they're just planted. And you really, if I can at least just kind of move with the guitar and still not, not get that wavering on the microphone. But I find that to be really important. I'm not always in that flow state when I'm recording. That's ideal. But there's just all those other factors, like, is there a hum in this cable again? Or, did I get the high enough signal and that kind of thing. So I'd like to take more relaxation during the process. We can do all the prep we want before the process, but we need to carry that through so that, just that magic can happen in the performance. So that's one thing. Ironically, as Ian is mentioning, he's been on pause for a decade with albums, and he's usually doing electric guitar and this kind of stuff. For the last 12 years, I have 14 albums out and a lot of singles, and acoustic guitar is real central to most of that work, to quite a bit of that work. And in June, I'm releasing something that has so little acoustic guitar in it, it's not funny. It's just like flip the narrative here on this. It even has, what's new for me, I'm even doing beats on it. And it's really, I love it because, when I write a piece for guitar, or a piece comes through me, as you're saying, channeling, it is a lot of that. When a piece comes through for guitar, a lot of times it is more melancholic, or, especially the nylon strings, to me, they just have that tendency. And what I love about this new album is it's a lot of joyfulness and extended joyfulness, and just lighter hearted. Like a joyful piece on the guitar for me, it's still just a 3-minute experience, and it's like, oh, that's pretty, but that's pretty short, So this is going to be really an interesting release for me, and I wish you all the luck on your release upcoming as well. So
I love this discussion because, before you guys got on, we were all hanging out and we were talking about, music, healing music specifically. And I was asking, I was like, there's a stereotype of healing music as mellow, kind of relaxing, kind of sleepy. And that's beautiful. There's room for that. And I just was thinking, okay, so we have these two esteemed artists who've really done a lot of thinking about this and who really live this idea of healing music and healing through music. And I was like, is there something besides very mellow 50 BPM acoustic stuff? So I love hearing everything you guys are saying.
I just, if I can say, so absolutely true. So in my work as a music therapist, it's all individualized and it's all about the client preferred repertoire. I'm not going to come to some teenager who loves Lil Peep and XXXTentacion and be like, well, sorry, dude, today we're doing Garth Brooks. And we're going to talk about how hard it is in Garth Brooks' life because, no. I'm going to be like, what music do you like? And I've had a kiddo on the spectrum, teenager, high functioning autism, and I'm doing music therapy with them. And we're doing skill acquisition and impulse control with Slayer and Motorhead, and that's what calms his nervous system. He felt more regulated for whatever reason. His physiology, his nervous system was like, no, dude, don't play Three Little Birds with me by Bob Marley. I don't want to hear that. But I love me some Motorhead. And so, I as a trained music therapist, I have to come to the table like a chameleon. I have to be able to go, I call myself like I'm a genre hopper. So I have to be able to like at the snap of a drop be like, okay, boom, Motorhead, and then the next moment, a half hour later, I'm working with somebody, or even in the same session, they might be like, well, now it makes sense for us to do something slow. So I have to really bend in between genres. And when you're doing music healing through the act of stoking their interest and preference in terms of what turns them on and like what music they like, yeah, all music is healing. It's what do they like?
Michelle, what do you think about that? The genre, doesn't have to be defined as a genre, but like healing music can be individualized.
Yes, definitely it can. Just in genres themselves, right? They're just like marketing tools. And we have to abide by them. You're putting your piece on Spotify. You got to choose a genre, whether or not it has anything to do with the music. So that's a very limiting thing. All music has potential to heal. All music delivers what it needs to as you listen, for the most part. I mean, there's a experience of listening to something to process feelings that you can't process without it, and it gets you through that. A lot of times that can happen with liking to listen to something that's a little more what could be called sad. And it feels good because you're processing that. Now, to my husband, he would be like, I don't want to hear that sad stuff. And I think he's just, he doesn't want to process it at the moment. It's fine. I'll listen to Koali with him, which we also love, and which is a great thing. So I think, even in my own stuff, like before I did any recording, I was making music here at home and bringing it to a yoga studio of a friend. And she was like, you really need to make an album. And it was much more like the music you were describing, being, 60 beats per minute and calm and, but things have evolved so much from them, just with music in this genre in general and in specifically, as I've just confessed, in my kind of music. I mean, I think about 8 years ago, I released an album called Flow, which was really kind of more world music. But did I have the audience for that? I don't know. I mean, there's some of those sitting, now that Spotify has decided, to cut us off from royalties with anything less than 1,000 streams. There's a couple things sitting below that, but it's still cool music. It's still part of my path, and I think it still delivers authentic stuff authentically from me.
You said it was called Flow?
Yeah, I just mentioned it because you mentioned it.
I love that. My new band is Flow. Yeah, and it's like, how amazing is it that there's all kinds of flow, right? There's not one flow, and I totally dip into the calm music and totally surrender to that. And I experience that for my own self-healing. But I also feel so much healing when I turn it up to 11 and go really loud and hard. It's just like, it depends on what I'm looking for.
That's the end of part 1. Tune into part 2 for some wellness tools you can use in your guitar practice. You'll find that on our Patreon page at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus.